Hi Seb, and welcome to Dad's Kitchen. We're going to do pizza tonight, and while it's one of the most difficult things to make once we get into the kneading and so on, once you get past that, it'll be easy, it'll be fun. But it starts really simple. And at first I want to show you what's coming. If my beautiful assistant can come over here, and you can see the ingredients that we're going to be putting on top of the pizza. Have everything prepared beforehand like I do. For meat lovers, we've got some steak tips, we've got some chicken sausage and bacon, and some marinated chicken, some peppers for Mom and for you, and of course a mix of shredded cheese, a blend of cheeses, and special ingredient. Okay, but before we get to all of that fun, we have to make the dough, and it starts out really simple. And you see we have some high gluten flour. In the supermarket, it's bread flour. Just go to the aisle in the bakery section, look for bread flour, and we're just going to measure out 6 cups. And the measurements I think are different in your cookbook, but I'm making a larger batch because we're going to have a bunch of people here, so I'm going to measure 6 cups of flour. You see how I'm doing it really loosely, just kind of like that, shake it around. Then I've already prepared 3 tablespoons of sugar and 3 teaspoons of salt. We're going to put that right in. And then 3 tablespoons of active dry yeast. This is the instant dry yeast. This is the kind you can just add. You don't have to worry about adding warm water to it separately. And we're just going to mix this all together, and you can see how to do this. You don't want the flour all over the counter yet. And so with a wire whisk, just kind of make sure, just like I did, make sure it's all mixed together. The sugar, the salt, the yeast, and the flour. Okay, that's for starters. And you notice I've made a well in the flour. Just make a little depression in the flour to hold the water. And then, this is very important. You've got to make the water so that it's very warm but not hot. And the best way to do it is to just stick your wrist under there and wait until the water's very warm but not hot, so it doesn't kind of smart the skin when you put it in. I'm going to make it just a little bit warmer. What the water does is activate the dry yeast. So we put the water in, it will activate the yeast and cause the dough to rise. So this is about right. Now, I don't know what the measurement is here, but you're going to add enough water. Keep adding water. You can't take water away. You can always add more, so just add a little bit at a time. And mix it in. I'm going to show you what you're looking for here. It's beginning to get wet, but you need to moisten all of the flour. Okay, so I've added just enough water. Here's what you're looking for, Elizabeth. When you stir the dough, it should begin to pull off the sides of the bowl. Can you see that? Can you see how it's pulling off the sides of the bowl? You don't want it too thin, like a pancake batter, but thick enough so that it will pull off the sides of the bowl, and that's ready. Now stir that just a little bit until you're sure all of the flour is moistened. And then scrape down the sides of the bowl like that. Sprinkle some flour on the counter that you're using so that the dough doesn't stick. And then turn this, turn it out of the bowl like that. This is where it gets a little bit tricky, but once you learn how to do this, it's going to be like second nature. You can see we put the dough out off the bowl onto a floured surface. Now we need to put some flour on top. Not too much, but just enough so that your hands aren't going to stick to it. Now we're going to knead it for very briefly. and then we're going to knead it longer in a little while. But I want you to notice the motion of the kneading. All we're going to do is fold it over, push, just get some of the flour incorporated, fold it, push, turn, fold it, push, turn, fold it, push, turn. And once you get really good at it, it's going to be almost like one motion. Watch this. Fold, push, turn. And the only thing you have to make sure is that the dough isn't sticking to the counter. You don't want to add too much, but if it starts to stick to your hands or the counter, you can just sprinkle a little bit more. The dough is ready to rest. And what that means is we're going to leave it on the counter and we're going to take the bowl. We're just going to cover it over with a bowl. Make sure that there's enough flour underneath there so it's not going to stick. So we'll just put some flour underneath. Cover it with a bowl so it doesn't dry out. And we're going to let it rest for 5 minutes. And what happens is that the yeast now begins to work. A combination of the warm water and the kneading will cause the yeast to begin to work, so that when you come back and you put your hands in the dough, you're going to feel that it's already begun to rise. Very nice feeling. So we'll let that rest for 5 minutes. We've covered our dough and it's rested for about 5 minutes. And when you put your fingers in it, you can feel that it's nice and soft and it's already begun to rise. And that was the whole purpose of that. Now we're just going to go back to the process of kneading it, making sure that it's not sticking anywhere on top or bottom. Remember, fold, push, turn. Turn about 1/4 of the way around. Fold, push, turn. And we're going to do this for about, I won't show you the whole thing, but we're going to do it for about maybe 5 to 10 minutes. The reason you do it, the reason you need it for so long is to distribute the yeast throughout the whole ball of dough. And you can feel when it's ready. It's just so nice and soft. It just kind of molds to your hand. And again, I just want to stress, you don't want to add too much flour, just enough. If it starts to stick on the bottom, I'll sweep a little bit under. But this is ready to rise. So we're going to take our bowl and we're going to add maybe a tablespoon of oil. It can be canola oil, olive oil. I'm adding garlic oil just to give it a little flavor to the dough. And we're just going to put this right in the bowl, toss it around like that so that it's all covered, and then turn the dough over and do the same thing. That way all of the dough is covered so that it doesn't dry up while it's rising. We'll cover that now with some plastic wrap. And we're going to let it sit and rise in a warm place, usually the top of the stove. I mean, obviously you don't want the stove going, the burners or anything, but that's usually a good place, especially if you're preheating your oven, which I should have mentioned. That's probably the first thing to do, is to preheat your oven. And if Mom can show you in here, you can see the baking stone, which is what I use. It's a rectangular, you can get a round baking stone, and you put it in there. And I've preheated the oven to the highest setting, which is 550. And it should probably heat for about an hour. And then, so this top is nice and warm. It isn't too hot, but it's warm enough so that it will help this dough to rise. It will probably take about an hour, maybe 45 minutes, until this is doubled in size.